So welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our first virtual roundtable. My name is Manuels Batista, and I'm a Senior Director here at Kroll, a global provider of risk solutions. In today's session, we're going to be talking about the compliance officer's role in times of uncertainty. And the goal is to provide you with insight on how to navigate the risks that come with safeguarding an organization, its brand, and human capital during challenging times. On the next slide, before we get started, so let's go over a few housekeeping items. First of all, we'd love this session to be interactive, so please don't hesitate to submit your questions via the GoToWebinar control panel. These questions may be answered during the session, and we'll also have allocated time for additional questions at the end. If we don't have time to answer all questions, answers will be provided by email. This webcast will be recorded, and all participants will receive a link afterwards. Please tell us how you feel about this webinar by completing a 2-question satisfaction survey in the end. Pop-up will appear and when the session is over. Note that the contents of this webcast reflect the thoughts of each of the participants and not the organizations. We have one more thing before we get started on the next slide. We'd like to know where you're calling from and how long you have been working compliance. So we'll have a quick survey that we'll demonstrate right now. So I'll give you a few seconds so that we can answer where you're calling from. Okay, let's go ahead and see the results. So most people are dialing from either EMEA or North America, and we have also representation from APAC. Must be very late for them, and also South America. Now let's go for the next question. We'd like to know how long you have been working compliance. Just give a few seconds as well. Let's go ahead and close the poll. Let's see the results. So the majority of you have worked more than 10 years in compliance. Quite an experienced group of individuals. Okay, so for the next slide, without any further ado, on the next slide, I would like to introduce you to today's moderator, John Arvanitis. He's a managing director at Kroll, and he advises clients on compliance programs and anti-bribery and corruption matters. John actually joined Kroll after a 27-year career with the Drug Enforcement Administration. He led several investigations with emphasis on money laundering and other finance-related activities while he was there. So now over to you, John.
Thank you, Manuel. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us today for our virtual roundtable. As Manuel stated, the compliance officer's role in times of uncertainty. With everything going on throughout the world in COVID-19, it is extremely timely for us to have a robust discussion with some compliance professionals who bring great value and seasoned experience to today's conversation. My name is John Arvanitis, and I'm going to serve as your moderator, as Manuel stated. We're privileged to be joined today by 3 dynamic compliance professionals who possess an incredible degree of talent as it relates to managing global compliance programs. Their commentary today will be predicated on real-life insights and experiences and based on each of their respective compliance journeys. My hope is that by the conclusion of today's webinar, each of you will recognize that our panel is seasoned in identifying, navigating, and managing the risk that comes with safeguarding an organization, its reputation and brand, and most importantly, its human capital in challenging times. Now, please allow me to introduce to you our guest speakers. Our first panelist is Fernanda Beraldi. Fernanda is presently serving as Senior Director of Compliance for automotive producer Cummins, Inc. Prior to assuming her present position at Cummins, she was responsible for ethics and compliance throughout Latin America. Fernanda brings a unique perspective to global compliance as a result of her international assignments and cultural awareness of the vast areas of the world she has worked and lived in the recent past. Fernanda's primary focus areas are corporate compliance program structure, strategy, and internal investigations with a focus on corruption prevention, third-party risk, anti-money laundering, anti-slavery programs, and the implementation of compliance program requirements throughout the globe. In 2019, Fernanda was selected as one of the top 10 30-something by the Association of Corporate Counsel and received a first chair award as a top compliance counsel. Recently also, Fernanda was selected by the Indianapolis Business Journal for the 40 under 40 2020 class. We're fortunate to have you here today, Fernanda, and thank you for taking the time. Our next panelist is Patricia Marinho. Patricia possesses over 15 years of legal and compliance experience. Patricia presently serves as Compliance Director for Latin and Central America on behalf of Willis Towers Watson, the third largest insurance broker in the world. Patricia is responsible for a team of local compliance professionals and for the administration of Willis's compliance program throughout the vast Latin American, Central American, and Caribbean regions. Patricia actively participates as a speaker at numerous international AML and data privacy conferences throughout the US and Brazil regularly. Patricia is also an active member of the Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists and the Programming Director of the ACAM South Florida chapter. We appreciate, Patricia, you taking the time to participate in today's discussion, and thank you. Our final panelist is Jessica Legorreta. Jessica is the Compliance Officer at Christus Muguerza, a Mexican subsidiary of US-based Christus Health System in Mexico City, Mexico. Jessica is responsible for Christus Muguerza's FCPA compliance and vendor management program in her role. Jessica is involved in code of ethics communication, compliance training, due diligence processes, hotline investigations, and risk assessments. Prior to joining Christus Muguerza, Jessica served as a compliance manager for a global pharmaceutical company in Mexico also. Your insights today, Jessica, will be greatly appreciated by our audience. Thank you again. As we all know, COVID-19's response continues to increase at an astonishing rate globally. It is more important than ever for compliance professionals to manage the risk created by the shifting paradigm. All of us recognize that our pre-COVID routines have given way to post-pandemic trial and errors, with the goal being defining and achieving what the new compliance normal will entail. Of course, this global pandemic has given us all pause, but we must recognize that the compliance function and responsibility must carry on, with the objective being maintaining safety for the workforce and its function while continuing to act responsibly and with the requisite ethics and integrity expected. This is very important for all of us in today's ever-changing world, and it's important for us to hear from our panelists as to how compliance and the new normal is going to be achieved through the balance. Ladies, let's jump into some questions. I'll ask the first question to the group. Through your experiences, how do your respective organizations' commitments to ethics and integrity during a critical event such as this global pandemic ensure that your compliance programs are effectively meeting their expectations? Fernanda, why don't we start with you for this one?
Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Great. Just making sure. So first of all, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you and joining this amazing group of panelists and audience. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you today. When I think about this question you're posing, John, the first thing that comes to my mind is that the ethics and compliance program of an organization cannot be a sprint. It's more like a marathon, you know? So you are, as compliance officer, compliance professional, required to building those blocks over time. So when something like this happens, you are prepared. Well, you would say, can anybody be prepared for a pandemic? I would say, yes, you are prepared because of our profession. We're prepared for crisis. We're molded and shaped by crisis. Probably not crisis at this level, but there's something in our DNAs, our compliance professionals, that get us ready for it quicker, right? So yes, you may be required to do small sprints throughout the pandemic, but hopefully you build a program throughout the years as a marathon, like slowly but surely building those blocks. One thing I was going to say is that a good compliance professional, unless you received a declaration from the DOJ in the past 24 months, is that you know exactly where your program is failing. You know exactly what the gaps you have in your program. It's more likely that the commitment that your company has to ethics and compliance already enabled you to identify those gaps through risk assessment. So those are the gaps that are more likely to be the weak links through a crisis. So my suggestion is that you should look into those, right? And start with those. Make sure those are strong. Make sure you have controls that will point out to potential, that will stop potential violations. So that's my 2 cents.
No, that's great. And that's great insight for our audience today. Jessica, what do you think about this?
Hi, thank you for having me here. It's an amazing experience. What I think on this question is, well, as healthcare organization, for us, it's always important to have our goal really clear, and our goal is to help to get people their health back. So when we have that in mind, one of the things that I always do on my trainings is to remind all my associates that the commitment is not with me or with the program. It's a commitment with integrity. So when the associate understands that it's not because of the rules, or it's not that he needs to comply with a ton of policies and procedures and the code of ethics, but to commit with integrity and to do the right thing, it's easier for all of us, and it will be easier to do the right thing, and then the compliance program will let's say walk by itself. It's not going to be hard to get to our goals. But what Fernanda said, it's also true. If you are a good compliance officer, you know what parts of your compliance program it's not on their best shape. So when you face a crisis like this, you know exactly where you are okay and where you have to put more attention.
No, I think that those are important points that you've made, Jessica, regarding compliance programs and the compliance profession in general. As we all know, compliance professionals don't take time off. It's a 365-day-a-year commitment to the organization, to the workforce, and to the program. Patricia, your thoughts would be greatly appreciated here, as a result of your experiences within your business.
Right. First, thank you so much for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Again, I will be not discussing exactly what my organization has passed through, but basically what our organization probably passed through. I have a group of compliance people that we speak every other 3 weeks regarding best practice and what we see at the market. And of course, especially now during the crisis, we are meeting more things. So never has operating with culture of integrity, ethics has been so important than now during this crisis, right? So business is very much worried about maintaining clients, continue to grow their business, and also with the well-being of the employees. So in addition to checking with the well-being of the employees, I think compliance should be supporting business with the communication. So communications could include reminders of values and ethical standards that apply, even if the business operation has moved to being almost online. So, for instance, in the business communications, compliance could put some links regarding to code of conduct, whistleblower policies, links to intranet sites, extra trainings, guidance that could help quick reference to the business. Okay, so in short terms, I think companies in general may need to relax some controls without doubt, but reinforce others. So compliance must be very focused on sustain also the business. So I would say that an immediate action should be, we need to always be consider the DOJ guidance. So what one of the guidance that they asked us to do? How often has companies update risk assessments and reviews them? So I believe this is a very good moment for the compliance to do it that. Make sure that the risk assessment is in line with this new world, with these new operations, okay? So it will be very critical for, as a matter of fact, one example could be for the companies that become absolutely online and they were not, example of electronic signature. So before we have the business meeting clients face-to-face, we have the business in the office, and when they need to sign contracts, they could do it when they were facing each other. But how we're gonna do now? So this is one new control that has to be implemented during this crisis for a lot of companies. This is an example of what I'm talking about. So it is critical for compliance to evaluate their compliance plan, because most of the companies, they implement a new compliance plan in the beginning of the year. And when we enter in this crisis, that was basically March, maybe the compliance plan that you have for 2020 is not adequate anymore. So evaluate whether the plan is adequate for the moment, and if the timeline in plan should be modified in order to maximize effectiveness, is very important. So assess also the best time for training, okay? For instance, financial crime training should start immediately, now in March or April, or should wait until the end of the year. All depend of kind of industry that you work. So I can imagine that industries like that it's providing for hospital now, suppliers, if they, by any chance they had planned to have their training for the beginning of the year, Q1 or Q4, they probably had to review that plan of trainings. Other companies, for instance, that have the training assessed to be done by the end of the year, for instance, maybe changed to the beginning of the year for the business kind of companies that currently the business, all they are doing is trying to keep clients that they already have, but are not being able to reach new clients because of the model of business that they have. So it's very important to identify exceptions, compliance approval that need to be required, like in terms gift, entertainment, hospitality, may see an additional scrutiny at the pandemic right now. So even though business is locked down, is not traveling, but it's always good that you review. However, something that is very important that that should be reviewed now, there are big companies that is not suffering with the crisis. As a matter of fact, is the opposite, and they consider to give donations to companies, contributions to companies that is passing through some financial crisis now. So this financial service company during this pandemic that it may donate funds to the others, so those payments must be done fast and delivering time. So compliance needs to be very fast on that, right? And need to support the business to understand if there is some kind of financial risks there. So while provide these donations to support society is a good actions, but behind this, there is the give back risk that so it is very important to make sure that they are not perceived as being a conditional or securing future business relationship. So this is when compliance needs to enter and guiding the business there on this new trend in the market. So compliance must monitoring cases like for a long period, this type of case for a long time, and must ensure that the rules of books and records are being followed. So all need to be transparent, clear, and justify at the books. Probably we should keep the same standards in terms of high-risk transactions that could be introducers. So all these must be clear to document. And so post-pandemic should be reviewed and carry out again. Those introducers has been always associated with high-risk driver and corruptions. And so companies should maintain the standards and probably use also risk assessment to set up some priority. For the companies who does not have a robust process in place to approve high-risk TPs, my recommendations here is you should implement this immediately, because this could be used to pay potential bribery, especially in moments like this.
No,
I think that I talk a lot.
No. I think I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I want to pick up on something that Patricia said, and build on it. If you, as a compliance function, if you're a function as compliance and a professional in compliance, if you're not already integrated within the business, in the sense that if you're not part of the business processes, if you do not feel that you have a seat at the table, the pandemic probably made your job much harder. Okay. Now we moved from a collaboration environment where you would see people face to face to remotely talking to people. So it's easy to, if you're not already part of the process, if you do not have a seat at the table, that you're falling behind, right? So it's important also that you have that self-awareness that if you feel that the things are continuing to happen in your company without you being part of that, that you raise your hand and say, I think I need to be part of that decision, right? It's very easy for people to isolate each other at this moment in time too, not only physically isolate, but also isolate you from processes. So make sure you're part of the discussion.
I think that those are great insights in today's environment on how to manage the compliance program. And I think that each of you brought up a key component here. As we move into the post-COVID era, how important, ladies, is creativity in regards to your compliance programs as you look at operational priorities and monitoring for risk? Because I think, Fernanda, you just said it. We're all working remotely. We have limited access to the normal work environment and capabilities that we had. So now we've got to adapt and be creative. maybe you could speak as to how you view creativity and adaptability in your respective compliance professions.
Okay, this is Fernanda. Normal is off the table now. I hope all of you know that now, by now, right? Normal is off the table now. So thinking about a salesperson working from home, trying to meet their goals, right? What are the things that this person will probably do? And if they were not trained appropriately, or if they're an apple, a rotten apple, what are the things, a bad apple, what are the things that that person would do to gain advantage in the current market? Okay, so think about things that would happen electronically. For instance, sending gift cards, electronic gift cards. Okay, if you are not monitoring your company's emails for the word gift card or something, or a cash equivalent gift at this point in time, you're probably behind, right? Again, if they cannot meet another person to deliver something face-to-face, they'll try to do it electronically, right? That's just one thing. Again, think about when you're sitting on the salesperson's seat, trying to obtain business, and think about the bribery risk. What would you do? Right? That's the kind of creativity that you have to have. If you have to deliver training and communication, and you're doing so where the rest of the company is trying to train and communicate people, you need to think how timely and appropriate your communication is going to be. Otherwise, it's going to be diluted in the big sea of other people trying to communicate. Think about people's safety. It's important that they get safety-related information first. It's important that they get wage and payment information first. So yes, your information is important, your communication is important, but have a discussion, an open discussion with your communications function about the possibility that you're just clogging the system when you're sending another piece of communication, right? Timing your communication with other teams' communications is important. Or even better, making sure that a compliance message is embedded in a business communication, in your CEO communication, when he or she is communicating about the deadlines or the goals that he or she is establishing for the company.
I think that's great. Jessica, from a healthcare profession standpoint, how do you view creativity? Are there new, protocols, new standard operating procedures that are being implemented?
Yeah, here at healthcare, every day we have a new drug or a new procedure or a new indication that can help with the crisis. So we have to, as an organization, we have to move faster, and we have to be able to put together all the processes, because it's not like it's not that easy. It's not like you have a meeting at 8 a.m. and said, well, we're going to do this, and this. So as healthcare, we need to have a bag, to have a procedure, to have a standard operating procedure in order in place before to communicate it to the units. We have hospitals in various states. So we have, as an organization, we have been really challenged to move fast and to get adaptive to all this new information every day. Like first it's one drug, and the next day that drug doesn't work anymore. And we also have facing issues that some of the drugs that are being recommended now, they're only allowed in the US, and we are not having the possibilities to bring it into the country. So we have to be very moving. And one of the things that I think we should do, like Fernanda and Patricia said, that you have to be like a sticker with the business. So if business is moving, and then, for example, they are starting with the telemedicine that is not really common here in Mexico, but we have to start with that. You need to move along with business to make sure that they are working on the right path. So not doing it just for doing it, but doing it on the right way. So I think it's very important to make ourselves as compliance officers, to make ourselves available to a business, and also to point of self as a team players, because if they see us like the policeman or the authority or something like that, they're not going to let us know what they're doing. And if they are looking at us as a team player, they're going to invite us, and we're going to be able to walk the journey with them, and then being there when the questions or the issues are arising, and we have the opportunity to accompany and be there, and to give them the good way to do the things. So I think creativity, it came, or maybe it should came from business, but should be a compliance officer should be walking with them on these new adventures.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point. This is a team approach. It's not a siloed approach, just compliance. You talk about your an organization and the different business lines that are responsible for the day-to-day productivity and deliverables of the business. Compliance is in that conversation. Compliance has to bring its insights, knowledge, and abilities to be able to work with the other business lines. Patricia, in your industry, how have you seen creativity post-pandemic, in a new normal society?
Well, I see that I don't know if it's about creativity, but it's things out of the box. I was considering, of course, compliance risks, and be able to be flexible to adapt to this new world, the new environment, which is virtual. So I saw for the compliance active people, this is a very good opportunity for those serious compliance who really take care their responsibilities inside of the company very seriously. This is a great moment to show how knowledgeable they are, how they understand the business, how they are able to understand this new operation, assess this new operation, and come with the new controls that fit the new real world. So I understand that employees at organizations around the world are trying to be productive, to perform their job remotely. Employers are concerned about the health, safety of their staff, but they are also whether the organization be able to exist after this pandemic, where the organization will be at this point. So in this context, organization must be very resistant also. I mean, compliance has to be thinking out of the box, but resistant to the temptations of sacrifice some of the compliance controls. So, and that's why I think it's very important we always consider our risk. We need to assess our vulnerability, where we can be flexible and where we should not be flexible. I always consider, I again continue to say, the guidance comes from DOJ. So in these specific times, compliance should rely also, it's very important, in this trustworthy relationship that they should have developed during this with the business during all the years you've been working, okay, at the company that you work for. So be close with the business. You should be part of the senior management. If you are not, it's a very good time for you to make these propositions to the company. So make sure that the communications could include, again, reminders of values, ethical standards that apply. Even if the business operation have moved to being a little bit different, you must be open to understand this new reality, to learn how the operation change and assess the new risks, to protect the company. I think we should focus in protect, to be flexible, but this is our job in the end of the day, supporting the business to grow, but protecting our organization, okay? Continue to update regulatory matters and fully aware of the guidance of the regulations. Regulators around the world in the first 3 months, every month or every week, we'll come in with new regulations, sometimes more relaxed, sometimes not as much relaxed as should be. So it's important to keep a close relationship with the regulations. Compliance must be in touch more often with the regulations in order to apply the correct interpretation of these new guidance that the regulations are issues. So the regulations, as I said, has made several announcements about the temporary relaxation enforcement, and we needed to be able to deliver this to the business, but not as before, when the regulators was coming to us with a new regulations and we have 1 month or 2 to review, to create a risk assessment. Now we need to communicate this to the business from one day to another. So we need to be much more alert and fast. So coronavirus has forced profound changes in most of the companies, and especially in the ones that was not very technology. And again, this is the new word. I don't think this word is really going to change for the future. Or the compliance who did not adaptate yourself for the next the last 3 months, please do it so. It's very important.
That's great. Those comments are very well taken and appropriate for today's discussion. Let's move on to a challenge that all global organizations are faced with today, revolving around the value and the use of third parties. You know, it's very, very difficult on a normal day to manage third-party populations, meet the regulatory obligation, and ensure that your third parties are acting globally appropriately. How, in today's environment, are each of you managing and overseeing and directing third-party management within your respective enterprises? Fernanda, why don't we start with you?
All right. So if we think about, again, and being in the seat of a salesperson, right? Thinking about what is that person trying to achieve. I put myself also in on the shoes of a third party, a dealer or distributor trying to sell at this point in time. I see the only difference between my employee and the third party's employee is the employment relationship, right? But that person is doing business on behalf of my company as well. That person is a third party. So thinking about what are the things he or she is trying to do to obtain business. You probably need to increase your communications to your dealers and distributors. If you're somewhat in the automotive supplier world or in the power supply world, you would have seen an increase of governmental sales at this point in time. More companies, governmental-owned companies, buying ways of delivering power to their constituents and their citizens. So a lot of sales around generators and things that would help hospitals and educational institutions and basic services to continue to run. So an increase in governmental sales, increase touch points between your third party and the government. So in that sense, you probably need to remind them more often than not that they still need to uphold your company's values. They still need to do business with integrity. And maybe you could push a little training. Maybe you can push a 2-minute training when you're doing so, right? So think about, again, your risk assessment, the one that you run in January, is not the same, won't yield the same results if you run it again. So echoing my other fellow panelists, your risk assessment is a live document, and you probably need to run it again right now, thinking about what are business units that your company are trying to achieve during the pandemic, and how the market your company sells to has shifted because of the pandemic, right? So if your company supplies to big, organizations that are in the tech space, you probably saw your company having to deliver more, having to sell more. Again, how does that affect your risk assessment? It can be the same as your January risk assessment or whenever you ran it for the last time. You need to take those new components into consideration, run it again, and run it quickly. Because again, we are 90 days in, so those deals are still already happening. And make sure that you implement changes quickly enough that you would have still results that in a way that your company will continue to be protected. Again, as Patricia said, our aim as compliance professionals is to support the business to do business with integrity, right? So if you're not running your risk assessment right now and supporting your business on how to do business with integrity in the pandemic, rest assured the business continues to happen, right? They're just not getting your message about how to do so with integrity. Those were my remarks.
No, I think you made some great points there, and I have a follow-up to that for you to comment on as well. How does due diligence fit into that approach that you just detailed for the group in these ever-challenging times?
I would probably say you need to ask follow-up questions in regards to how that third party you interact with, how they interact with government officials. You probably want a map of potential customers that they have, customers that they have in the governmental space. You probably need to scrutinize this a little deeper than you were doing before. Again, this is for bribery risk. If you're dealing with a third party that processes data for you, that processes personal identifiable information, then it's a different type of risk altogether, right? If you're switching your payroll company, if you're hiring a company to help, a vendor to help you with health screening for your employees as they go back to your offices right now, that's a whole different type of risk altogether. I think, again, we were giving a more specific focus on bribery and corruption, but we can't forget the risk that's on our faces right now, which is data privacy leaks, right? The data privacy protection. Considering we're now, asking a lot of folks how they're doing, and we actually want them to fill a form telling us how they're doing. So different types of risks, different type of approach. Due diligence needs to be deeper. It needs to be done with a little bit more scrutiny, I would say.
That's great. That's great insight, because as you said, organizations depend on their third parties. They bring great value to the organization's abilities to maintain and expand their global footprint. Jessica, do you have commentary relative to third parties and due diligence that you could share with the audience?
Sure. For us, again, as healthcare, we need to be sure who are our vendors, who are our third parties. I just see a news yesterday, I think, about a company that sell masks, but the masks were not meeting the quality standards, so people die because of using those masks because they think they were protected, but they weren't. So for us, it's really important to make sure that we are doing business with the right person. And during the crisis has been really hard because the things have been really hard to get. It's really hard to get a mask, or it's really hard to get gloves or any equipment, protection equipment. So we have to open our not to buy from our usual vendors. We have to open to see what was on the market. And unfortunately, in Latin America, due diligence, it's not always on the DNA of the processes. So sometimes business see due diligence as a thing that they have to meet because someone or a policy or something like that is asking it, and not because of they need to be sure what company are you bringing in. So it's really hard to try to make it or to put it in the DNA or in the process or in the mind of the people. And when you add that the resources are not able or are not as easy as get as some time ago, and we need to have it, and it's urgent, and we have to have, for example, the protection equipment for our associates that are working with the disease. So it's really hard, and I think that for us that has been work is like I said, being present. Our knowing your customers due diligence processes had to be faster. If in a regular time I took, I don't know, maybe a week, now I have to do it in half of the time because the business is moving at that speed, and we need to keep up the pace with them. And another thing that I consider really important, that I don't know if all the industries have been doing or having it, but we as healthcare are having it a lot, it's donations. So we have been receiving a lot of donations, or a lot of industries or companies are looking at us for giving us something, from masks to printers to sandwiches, I mean everything. So we need to be very sure which companies are we receiving these donations, because it's a really hard risk now. Unfortunately, that the crisis times also allow people to use it for the bath. So it's easier to do it, or to try to do money laundering through donations. So we have to be very available for the business, and reminding them this process, because donation, it's not a process that it's as usual for us. We have on a regular year 1 or 2, and it's always through the same department for things. So but now it's getting through everywhere, through all the hospitals, and we have to be in the top of mind of people, that when they are being offering to get donation, they need to reach out us, so we can again be with them on the path of working with that. And again, it has to be faster.
Well, ladies, thank you very much for your informative insights on, the conversations that we've had so far. But why don't we take some questions? I know that we've gotten some from the attendees, and Emmanuel, feel free to send some over.
Sounds good, John. We actually just addressed one question by Jessica's comments. It was asking, during COVID, government had to purchase respirators and other supplies from China very fast. There was no time to follow the normal due diligence rules on the seller. As a result, many supplies arrived damaged or not in accordance to the norms and overpriced. How would you have done it differently in order to minimize this problem? I think that Jessica has addressed this at some point, but I just wonder if others would make another comment on this.
I think we lost. Manuel, are you there?
It was cutting a little bit, Manuel. Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. So the question is that,
I think.
I can hear.
Yeah.
I can hear, but I think it's regarding about working with 30 parts, right? Something like that. It is something like that, Emmanuel? So I think, John, I will continue with your question regarding 30 parts, and I think it's more or less related to this. Guys, extremely important. We keep in our mind that it's when we are receive examination from our regulators, it's not very easy for them if they believe that company probably was doing some kind of bribery and corruptions. It's not easy for the regulator to prove that. So most of the things that they do in general is reviewing books and records. So that's why payments to third parties, it's very important to pass through a process. Those payments has to be very clear why we are paying a third party. So the reason is because they are providing us some kind of service. We need to, compliance should be really monitoring if this third party is doing this service for the organizations. And it's very important also to understand the risks of those third parties in terms of, are they licensed? This company that is providing a service to our organizations, are they licensed? Are they having a risk to losing their license? Where they allocate, what type of industry they are trying to serve, sell a service to ourselves? Or they are this type of third party that only want to introduce business to us and receive some kind of payment for that. So all those little highlights that I just provided here, I think it's important for every single company have in mind, the compliance officers that have these in mind. Books and records, we always need to have these clear, and how important it is payments be transparent and and we have all the justifications at the books.
No, thank you, Patricia. That was valuable, from the standpoint of type of risks and the value of due diligence as part of third-party assessment for risk. We're coming up on about 5 minutes left, and I wanted to pose one more question to you each, and it's going to be very, very short, but I think it's very, very important to the attendees to get your perspective. So I'm wondering what keeps you up at night regarding your compliance program.
Could you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
No, Patricia, no problem. What keeps you up at night regarding your compliance program today?
Well, I'll take the question.
Yes, okay.
Go ahead, Patricia.
Do you want to go, Fernanda?
No, you can go.
Okay. To tell the truth, what I think this is a great moment, as I said, for the compliance team. It's not really regarding specifically with compliance that make me wake during the night. I'm a little bit more worried regarding to those, since everybody now is working virtuals, so it's much more the risk of cybercrime. This is the things that really don't let me work well during the night. So I think this is any industry will probably be receiving currently a lot of phishing attacks with requesting for payments that doesn't exist, leaders receiving the invoices that must be paid immediately. So I think this is the area that concerns me more inside of my company and any other company.
That's great. Fernanda?
Yeah, so because I am an absolute control freak, a lot of things keep me up at night. So I listed some here so we could talk about this while Patricia was talking. I am concerned about, when things start to get back to normal, this risk of an expanded risk of bribery when people just try to run and rush to make their numbers for the year. And also there's another branch of this, which is as we start to slowly open our facilities, and not only Cummins, but other companies around the world too, you will more likely get a lot of more government visits, right? Inspections, audits from the local governmental agency to understand your compliance with, health and safety for your employees. So in countries that are not where integrity is a challenge, or in industries where integrity may be a challenge, I wonder whether how that interaction is going to go between the agency inspectors and the employees, right? Are they trying to, impose penalties? Are the employees trying to, bribe bribe themselves out of the issue to avoid a fine or a penalty? I'm also concerned about, in an environment where where companies are reducing payment or furloughing people, that they will try to obtain those wages somewhere and create a conflict of interest, right? There were slews of cases in the news about people in the government that were trying to sell masks or sell things that they had access to, creating conflicts of interest. So I can totally see this happening in a company too, right? Person is trying to supplement their income and steps into a conflict. And the last thing I would say in terms of concern would be training and communication fatigue. We are, seeing in front of the screen the whole time, Zoom, Skype, whatever, GoToWebinar, you choose a platform. And I wonder whether a compliance message would get diluted in the big pool of messages that we're trying to communicate to employees and third parties. So at a certain point in time, I think we need to consider training fatigue and possibility of training fatigue and adjust messaging accordingly, make it smarter, shorter, more engaging. So those will be things that keep me up at night.
No, those are great insights that you provided, Fernanda. Jessica, we only have a couple of minutes left. Do you have a thought on what's keeping you up at night from a compliance perspective?
Sure. I think one of the things that keep me up at night, it's like Fernanda said, that the message of compliance is diluted. As a healthcare company, we have so much more urgent issues to address, to attend our patients, and I'm worried that that noise can at some point not letting our associates to remember or to recall that we compliance are there, and that there are some kind of procedures that we need to fulfill. Again, the third party part for me, it's really important in this country and in this part of the world. Doing due diligence, it's vital, because the third parties are not really we cannot be sure that who are working with, and new companies emerge every day, and they are trying to sell whatever they can, or whatever the market is needing. So that's another thing. And again, like Fernanda said, the goals. I'm worried about the goals that the companies can state after this, and when you have an unreachable goal, that's the perfect storm for start bribing or doing inappropriate things in order to get to the number. So for me, that's the things that keep me awake at night.
Well, thank you very much. And ladies, we're on the hour, and I want to say from all of us, thank you for the valuable insights that you provided today. Thank you for your commitment to the compliance profession and your continued commitment, of course, to your respective organizations. For the audience, thank you for taking the time to join us. I hope it was informative to you, the perspectives that our panelists brought from their respective industries and their personal experiences. For